Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt really productive? Like you had a genuinely good day. You woke up at a decent time, you had a plan, you ticked things off your list, you did the things you said you were going to do. Maybe you even felt proud of yourself by the end of it. Now, let me ask you something else, and I want you to actually sit with this one. When was the last time you felt like you were actually going somewhere? Not just doing things, not just staying on top of stuff, but like genuinely moving towards something that matters to you. Because for a lot of us, those two things are not the same moment. And I think that gap, that space between being productive and actually moving forward, is something we don't talk about nearly enough. I've been thinking about this for a while now. And the more I think about it, the more I realize how many people, including myself, at certain points have been using busyness as a substitute for direction. We stay productive because it feels like progress, it feels responsible, it feels like you're doing something with your life. You've got things on your calendar, tasks getting completed, you're not just sitting around doing nothing. So it must be going somewhere, right? But here's the thing, productivity doesn't actually ask where you're going, it just asks you to keep moving. And there's a huge difference between motion and momentum. And I think a lot of us have gotten really good at motion. We've built habits, we've got routines, we've consumed enough self-improvement content to last a lifetime. But somewhere in all of that, we forgot to ask the most important question. What is all this for? That question sounds very simple, but it's actually one of the hardest ones to answer honestly. Because the honest answer for a lot of people is I don't know. And admitting that isn't comfortable. So instead, we just stay busy. And admitting that isn't comfortable. So instead, we just stay busy. Because busy feels better than lost. Here's what I mean when I say productivity and progress are not the same thing. Productivity at its core is just about output. You do tasks, you complete things, you manage your time well, and that's it. It doesn't care what the tasks are. It doesn't care if those tasks are actually taking you anywhere meaningful. It just rewards you for doing them. Forward movement, real progress requires something that productivity doesn't ask you for. It requires a destination. It requires you to have some idea, even a rough one, of what you're actually building towards. You can be the most disciplined person in the room and still be running in the wrong direction, or even worse, running in circles. Very efficiently, very consistently, but going nowhere. And I think this is especially true for our generation. We grew up being told the path: work hard, get good grades, get into university, get a degree, get a stable job. The destination was always handed to us. Nobody really sat us down and said, okay, but what do you want? What does a life that feels meaningful actually look for you? So we hit adulthood with all this drive, all this work ethic, but no real vision to aim at it. And rather than sit with that uncertainty, we just kept doing what we were trained to do. We kept being productive because that at least felt familiar. I went through a whole season of my life like this. I was genuinely busy, things were happening, but when I actually slowed down and looked at what I was building or tried to, there was nothing there. I was maintaining, I was managing the day-to-day, but I wasn't building towards anything that actually meant something to me. I just hadn't stopped long enough to realize that. And here's the scary part. Productivity can actually hide that from you. When you're busy, you don't have to sit with the discomfort of not knowing where you're going. The to-do list fills that space. The routine fills that space. Staying on top of things fills that space. And it's such a socially acceptable way to avoid the bigger questions. Nobody's going to look at a hardworking person and say something's wrong, but something can absolutely be wrong. There is also this comparison trap that makes everything worse. You look around and everyone seems to be doing something, posting achievements, getting opportunities, building things. And so even if you have no idea where you're going, you feel like you at least need to look like you're going somewhere. So you optimize, you create systems, you become more efficient, all while still not having answered the one question that actually matters. So how do you actually tell the difference? How do you know if you're genuinely moving forward or just staying busy? I think it comes down to one question you have to be brutally honest with yourself about. At the end of the day, do you feel like you're building something or just maintaining something? Building feels like momentum. Even on the slow days, even on the hard days, there's an underlying sense that this is leading somewhere. That what you're doing today connects to something bigger. Maintaining feels like trading water. You're not sinking, and I get that that's something, but you're not getting to shore either. And look, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not saying you need to have your whole life figured out. No, I'm not saying that. Nobody does at this age. And honestly, anyone who tells you they do is probably lying to themselves a little. But there is a difference between not having everything figured out and not having asked yourself the questions. The questions like what actually matters to me separate from what I was told should matter? What would I genuinely regret not trying? What am I building towards, not just working hard? What kind of person am I trying to become? And are my current habits actually moving in that direction? Those questions are uncomfortable. They're the kind of questions that, if you sit with them long enough, start to shake things up, which is probably why we avoid them by staying productive. It's easier to optimize your morning routine than to question whether your mornings are pointed at the right life. But here's what I found, and this is the part I really want you to hear. That discomfort, that uncertainty where you actually ask yourself these things, that's not a bad sign. That's the beginning of something real. Because on the other side of those questions is actual clarity. A sense, even if it's imperfect and incomplete, of what direction you want to move in. And once you have that, even a rough version of it, your productivity starts to mean something different. It stops being motion and starts being momentum. The same habits, the same discipline, the same hard work, but now it's aimed at something. And that changes everything about how it feels to do it. So here's what I want to leave you with. Being disciplined is valuable. Building good habits is valuable. Showing up consistently is also valuable. I'm not taking any of that away, but none of it matters as much as it could if you haven't done the harder work of figuring out where you actually want to go. And I think a lot of us skip that part. Not because we're lazy, but because it's genuinely hard. It requires sitting in discomfort. It requires questioning things we've just accepted. It requires being honest about what we actually want versus what we've been told to want. That's not easy, but it's necessary. Because productivity is just a vehicle, and the vehicle without a destination is just a car parked in the driveway with the engine running. It looks ready and it sounds ready, but it's not going anywhere. Figure out where you're going first, even if it's messy, even if it changes later, even if people don't understand it right now. Get some kind of direction and then use the discipline to get there. That's when it actually starts to feel like something. Anyway, that's just what I've been sitting with lately. Let me know in the comments if this resonated with you or if you've got a different take. Honestly, drop it down there because I want to have that conversation. And if you're new here, this is the kind of thing I like to talk about on this channel. So stick around, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.